Hi, everybody. Am I coming through loud and clear? Everybody in the back can hear me? Yes? Good. Okay, great. So just a quick thank you to Ian and to Emily and to all the organizers for the event. I would say not a shameless plug because I'm not behind the plug, but you have a tremendous resource here in Liverpool with the Civic Data Cooperative. It is really one of the unique resources across the UK where citizens, members of the public can be empowered to be involved in this dimension of our kind of, socio-technical existence, our kind of, increasingly cyber-physical existence where we're constantly interacting with data, we're constantly yielding data, we're constantly having our data collected. So we should have control, we should have power over that data. And the Civic Data Cooperative is here to position the community to take control. So just, I guess, by show of hands, how many people heard of the UK AI Safety Summit? By show of hands. Okay, roughly say half. And of those hands that were up, how many people could confidently say in 10 seconds what the outcome of the AI Safety Summit was? Zero hands. Okay. So anyway, I was going to talk a little bit about the Safety Summit. So talking about it without explaining the context. So let me quickly just explain context, and then I'll talk about the summit itself. So the UK AI Safety Summit was the culminating point of about a year or so of anxiety, right? So, ChatGPT was launched as Ed mentioned, in November of 2022. Within 3 months, I believe there was 100 million ChatGPT users. ChatGPT is a generative AI sort of conversational text generator that can, serve multiple purposes as you're interacting with it. And what immediately happened over the next, say, 10 months was what we might think of as the industrial revolution of AI, right? Up to that point, AI had commercial potential, but nobody had figured out how to really scale it and make it into a kind of a mass consumer product. And within that short time span, suddenly this was a major commercial force. Microsoft and Google integrated into their flagship services. There have been multiple thousands of sort of API kind of entrepreneurs who have repurposed or been using the service behind ChatGPT as a way to sort of commercialize the use of AI. So what really happened in the months that followed ChatGPT's initial release was a kind of a mass realization, not just that this is happening, everybody's going to be using it, this might displace labor, etc. There's this moment where people recognize, hold on a second, like, how are we going to regulate this, right? There's really no substantial, both international but also national strategy for governance and regulation. And on the one hand, you had a lot of people protesting that these systems will just amplify bias, they will spread toxicity through the production, the fire hose of disinformation that these systems could produce. They could do many other harmful things in the world. And at the end of the day, there's this vacuum. There's no kind of governance or regulation. And so the talk was, well, we need to have international action. And so the UK stepped up, right? The UK stepped up. Rishi Sunak went to Washington, convinced Joe Biden that they needed to have the first AI Safety Summit in the UK. So that's the context. Now we get to the summit. That was probably my whole time giving the context, but okay. So the summit happened, and in the weeks that followed the Safety Summit, which was held at Bletchley Park, which is where the codebreaker Alan Turing Institute, the namesake of my institute, broke this major code and supposedly shortened the war, which is true. So at Bletchley Park, the AI Safety Summit was held. And in the weeks that followed the summit, there was a kind of reports of its overwhelming success, flooding ministerial statements and social media feeds. So just after the summit wound to a close, the UK's Secretary of State, Michelle Donnellan, for Science, Innovation and Technology, told Parliament that the agreement of the Bletchley Declaration, which was the actual output of the summit, it was a kind of position statement signed on about the future of AI by the 28 participating states at the summit. That this declaration, she said, made the summit a watershed moment in the history of AI safety. She went on to claim that, quote, securing an agreement on the government-led testing, the pre-deployment of frontier models was truly a game changer, making the summit surpass all expectations. Okay, so this was the narrative that was coming out. So news analysis published at the time were less hopeful or sanguine. An opinion column from The Guardian called the whole affair, quote, a vanity jamboree engineered by a diminished nation trading on silicon celebrity. If anybody saw Rishi Sunak interviewing Elon Musk. Trading on Silicon Valley celebrity instead of advancing democratic accountability. That was from The Guardian. Another from the Financial Times called the Bletchley Declaration, quote, worthy but toothless. Finally, an analysis from the New Statesman similarly concluded that the declaration, quote, does little more than acknowledge that there are risks and to pledge to explore them. The only concrete action promised in the wording is to hold more summits in the future. Perhaps this meeting could have been a ChatGPT-generated email, save the carbon expenditure of jetting everyone out. That was from the New Scientist, unquote. While the mixed reception of the summit's outcomes among these critics seems to display a kind of sensible skepticism or sobriety, we need to pay close attention to, I would say, a more consequential but broadly underreported or unreported elephant that remains poised in the middle of the room. This unspoken issue has to do with the contradiction between the missionary rhetoric and the sense of historical self-importance that seemed to largely motivate and frame the summit and its relatively meek or ineffectual outcomes. The summit had originally been promoted by the Sunak government as a pivotal historical event. Sunak claimed in his pre-summit speech launching the UK AI Safety Institute that AI, quote, will bring a transformation as far-reaching as the Industrial Revolution, the coming of electricity or the birth of the internet. Get this wrong, he continued, and AI could make it easier to build chemical or biological weapons. Terrorist groups could use AI to spread fear and destruction on an ever greater scale. Criminals could exploit AI for cyber attacks, disinformation, fraud, or even child sexual abuse. Get this right, however, he said, and nothing in our foreseeable future will be more transformative for our economy, our society, and all of our lives than this technology, unquote. Indeed, the Bletchley Declaration seemed to parrot this kind of two-track framing, this Janus-based framing. On the one hand, it said, quote, there is a potential for serious, even catastrophic harm, either deliberate or unintentional, stemming from the most significant capabilities of these advanced frontier AI models, unquote. On the other hand, now this is the other side, quote, AI has the potential to transform and enhance human well-being, peace, and prosperity. We recognize, this is still in the Bletchley Declaration, we recognize that this is therefore a unique moment to act and affirm the need for the safe development of AI and for the transformative opportunities of AI to be used for good and for all in an inclusive manner in our countries and globally. This includes for public services such as health and education, food security, in science, in clean energy, in biodiversity and climate, to realize the enjoyment of human rights and to strengthen efforts toward the achievement of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Okay, that's all the language of the Bletchley Declaration. So this contrastive narrative that cropped up both in Sunak's rhetoric and the Bletchley Declaration attempted to situate the summit as a needed intervention at an inflection point in human history, a moment where decisions made now about AI's present and future direction of travel and about how to set the rapid development of these frontier models on the right course would dramatically shape the fate of humankind and also the biosphere. But here's the elephant in the middle of the room. If, as in this framing, AI is in fact placing us, humanity, at a turning point, if it is situating the present generation at an axis of choice, a pivot of choice, that will determine whether the evolution of the technology moves towards the exponential advancement of the public good or towards possibilities for potentially irreparable harm to people, society, and planet, right? If it has these kind of positive or negative potential consequences, then the most important questions of our time, right, are who actually has their hands on the wheel? Who defines the agenda of frontier AI innovation? Who controls the means of producing it, and thus ultimately its influence on humanity's broader fate? These questions cut much more deeply than those surrounding the risks from unforeseen advances in frontier AI capability or those around pre-deployment safety testing that took up much of the oxygen of the summit. They have to do with who possesses agenda-setting power, who decides on when, where, and how these technologies are developed and deployed, and on who stands to benefit from or who stands to be harmed by them. They also raise further questions about how affected members of society, impacted communities, can harness control over harness this control over the direction of AI to serve the common good and thereby to exercise agency over the trajectories of their collective futures, right? So it's the questions that the framing raised are questions which direct us precisely away from what actually happened, right? We should have gone in the direction of asking these deep public interest questions, and instead all we talked about is pre-deployment testing. So just to close here, I would just say one of the greatest mortal threats of this current situation that I've described is that such critical public interest questions continue to be placed at the fingertips of the same large private sector companies whose exertion of brute force agenda-setting authority, closely guarded control over critical digital infrastructure, and narrow-minded financial thrust have largely engendered the crisis that motivated the summit itself. In fact, the deafening silence around these issues related to the fraught relationship of AI innovation, power in the sense of public power, and corporate power, and the public interest could be reasonably seen as the single greatest failing of the summit and all of the related international governance initiatives. Thank you.